The survival pod had crashed on Kepler 442b 3 hours ago, and the situation was deteriorating fast. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, pregnant with the promise of the planet's notorious electrical storms. The wreckage smoldered behind them, completely unsalvageable. Jake Martinez assessed their supplies with growing dread. Nothing. No tools, no shelter materials, no survival equipment. Just 5 survivors from different species, stranded on a hostile world. The storm approaches, chittered Zelthor, the Mantillion navigator, his compound eyes reflecting the darkening sky. We must find cover immediately. Cover? Where? Snapped Lieutenant Vrak of the Korthan Empire, his scales rippling with agitation. There's nothing but plains and those sparse trees for kilometers. Dr. SCIFI, the Pleiadian botanist, wrapped her translucent arms around herself. Our ship's sensors predicted Category 5 electrical storms. Winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. We'll be killed if we remain exposed. Ambassador Quills, a Dracorian diplomat whose reputation preceded him, simply sat down on a rock. Then we die with dignity. There's nothing to be done. Jake had been silent until now, surveying the landscape with the practiced eye of someone who'd grown up camping in Colorado's backcountry with his father. While the aliens saw desolation, he saw opportunity. We're not dying today, Jake announced, already moving toward a cluster of trees near a slight depression in the ground. Human, your optimism is admirable but foolish, Vrak called after him. You have no tools, no materials. What do you propose? Jake didn't answer. He was already working. The aliens watched with a mixture of confusion and pity as the human began pulling at dead branches. Most species in the galaxy had evolved past the need for primitive survival skills. They relied on technology, on manufactured solutions. The concept of building something with bare hands seemed almost comically archaic. But Jake's hands moved with purpose. He selected branches carefully, testing their strength, their flexibility. He used rocks to pound stakes into the ground, creating a framework. The aliens had dismissed the fibrous vines growing on the trees as useless local flora, but Jake wove them together, creating surprisingly strong cordage. What is he doing? SCIFI whispered to Zelthor. I believe, he's attempting to construct a shelter. Manually. Without fabricators or assembly drones. The storm was closer now. Thunder rumbled across the plains, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The aliens huddled together, their advanced physiology offering little protection against the elements. Species that had conquered faster-than-light travel had forgotten how to deal with weather. Jake worked faster. He'd created a basic A-frame structure, reinforced with a lattice of interwoven branches. Now came the critical part, weatherproofing. He gathered large leaves from the stubby trees, layering them like shingles, overlapping them to shed water. He packed mud and clay from the depression into gaps, creating a seal against the wind. This is madness, Quills muttered, his reptilian features twisted in skepticism. Sticks and leaves against a Category 5 storm. The rain intensified. Within minutes, it became a deluge. The aliens stood there, water streaming off their bodies, too proud or too resigned to move. Their clothing, designed for climate-controlled environments, offered no protection. Get in here. Jake shouted over the roar of wind and rain. Now. The shelter wasn't large, but Jake had built it in the depression, using the natural landscape for additional protection. Reluctantly, the aliens crawled inside, expecting it to collapse at any moment. It didn't. The storm unleashed its full fury. Lightning split the sky in jagged purple arcs. Wind howled across the plains with apocalyptic force. Rain fell so heavily it seemed like they were underwater. But inside Jake's primitive hut, they were dry. The structure groaned and creaked, but held firm. The layered leaves shed water perfectly. The mud-packed seams didn't leak. The frame, anchored deep and braced strategically, withstood winds that would have torn apart a poorly designed prefab shelter. Hours passed. The aliens sat in stunned silence, pressed together in the small space, watching the human who'd saved their lives. Jake periodically checked the structure, reinforcing a brace here, adjusting a support there, reading the shelter like it was a living thing. "How did you know?" SCIFI finally asked. "How did you know it would work?" Jake smiled tiredly. "My dad taught me. Humans survived for thousands of years before we had technology," he'd say. "Never forget what your hands can do. We used to build shelters in the wilderness, practice primitive skills. Everyone thought it was outdated, useless knowledge for a spacefaring civilization. Your species maintains these ancient skills." Zelthor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "But why? You have advanced technology." "Because technology fails," Jake said simply. "Like today. And when it does, you need to remember what you are. We're survivors. Earth didn't give us much. No natural armor, no environmental resistance, no specialized adaptations. So we learned to adapt with our minds and hands. We learned to build, to create, to overcome." Vrak's scales had stopped rippling. The proud Korthan warrior looked at the human with newfound respect. "My people conquered 17 star systems through military might. Yet here, now, I am helpless as a hatchling. While you, with nothing but sticks and mud, create sanctuary." "That's humanity," Jake said. "We're not the strongest or the fastest. We're not the smartest or the most advanced. But we're stubborn, resourceful, and we never stop trying. When there's no hope, we make our own." The storm raged through the night, but inside the shelter, 5 aliens began to understand why humanity, despite being relative newcomers to the galactic stage, had earned such a unique reputation. They were survivors in the truest sense. Not because they could endure anything, but because they refused to accept that anything was impossible. When dawn finally broke and the storm passed, the aliens emerged to find the landscape transformed. Trees were down, the ground was torn up, and their pods' wreckage had been scattered even further. But Jake's shelter stood intact, a testament to ancient knowledge and human determination. "I believe," Ambassador Quill said slowly, "that I have much to learn about your species, Jake Martinez." Jake just grinned and started dismantling the shelter, salvaging materials they'd need for the next challenge. Because there would always be a next challenge. And humans? They'd always find a way through.